Hi, I'm Ron Lawson, and we're here at Glen Helen, and today we have a bike we've really been looking forward to getting our hands on. It's the Beta 350 RX. If you're familiar with Beta and its motocross program, the 300 RX was what got them started on the road to, well, basically their whole motocross program, even supercross later on with the 450. We're big fans of that 300, so we were a little nervous when they announced the 300 was gone for 2026. In its place, we have now the 250 RX and this bike, the 350 RX. At the same time, we're kind of excited because we all want big two-strokes to come back. If you've been around long enough, you remember the days, the KX500, the CR500. We love those bikes still, but towards the end of the reign, they weren't necessarily competitive because they made so much power. They were hard to start. They were hard to jet. Everything was just a little bit unfriendly about them. Now we're hopeful. Maybe this is going back in that direction. We'll have a bike that has electric start and still a big bore. Now, basically, this bike, it is loosely based on the 300 that we've seen before. It's carbureted, it has a mechanical power valve, but they've upped the game a little bit. The stroke has increased and the bore has increased. And on top of that, it has twin spark plugs. With big bore two-strokes, getting complete combustion has always been an issue. Should be a lot better on this thing. Everything else is very similar to what we've seen before with the 300. The frame was changed last year quite a bit with influence from the 450 RX motocross bike and stuff that they learned from their supercross team. You still have all the features that we kind of love about this bike. It has KYB suspension, Nissan brakes, and an old-fashioned key-in carburetor. We're going to ride the bike a little bit now and get back to you. We've actually been on it for a few weeks. We're going to trade off, put Mark Tilley and Jared Hicks on it, and spend a few laps around Glen Helen and see what it feels like on a hot day in Southern California. now we're back. We've been riding the bike. Again, we've had this bike for a couple of weeks now. We've learned quite a bit about it. First things first, it is more powerful than the 300. The bulk of the difference is right in the middle of the power band. And I think Beta was trying really hard to up its game in that department, because at the Two-Stroke World Championship at Glen Helen, the main bikes for years have been punched out YZ 250s. Those bikes make a lot of power. They are not necessarily friendly. This year, Dante Oliveira won on a box stock KTM 300 SX. And as we know, those bikes can tend to be a little short-fused. At that race, they had stroked versions, they had board versions, they tried a lot of different configurations. Beta wound up with 2 bikes in the top 5. This bike is probably a little softer in its power band than either one of the pro bikes that they had at Glen Helen. It's still not a monster. It still makes very smooth power. The difference is that it makes a lot of power in the middle, like I said, and it doesn't necessarily stop there like you would expect. You would think that a big 350cc two-stroke would just run flat and then not go anywhere on top. That's not the case here. It continues to rev, it just doesn't really make more power up there. We think that if a pro got on this thing, he would want to shift that power and get a lot more on top. For average guys, this is actually pretty sweet. We would actually like to see more low-end power. Right off the bottom, the 350 might even be a little softer than the 300. Probably what Beta did in their testing was try to shift a lot of that power further up in the power band, and that's why you have top end that isn't necessarily bad. As a result of that slightly soft low end, you still have to clutch the bike a little bit coming out of turns. Then you get into that big, thick, meaty mid-range, little bit of over rev. It's a great power band, but you do have to shift more than you would think. You probably even have to shift more than you did the 300. As far as suspension goes, we've gone back and forth on that a little bit. The front end is a little soft. The back end is a little stiff. You get a little bit of a stink bug feeling on this bike. As a result, we kind of took off as much preload as we could on the rear end. We still probably had less free sag than we would like, mostly because we didn't want to take the preload completely off. We have a feeling that riders who weigh less than, say, 160 pounds won't be able to ride with the stock spring in the rear. You won't be able to get the sag right. Like I said, it is a little soft. The front end, you can make it work. You just stiffen it up a little bit. It's well within the range of adjustability. That's what we love about KYB suspension. No matter how it starts off, you can always make it work. In terms of weight, we've already had it on the scale. It is 1 pound lighter than the 300. It comes in at 224 pounds without any fuel on our digital scale. Other things that we love about this bike, the jetting is spot on. This isn't like the old days of the 500 two-strokes where you endlessly spent time changing the pilot, the air screw, and the needle settings. It's great. It's good to go. Admittedly, we are in the middle of a Southern California summer right here, and we have temperatures in the 90s. We've mostly ridden it at Glen Helen, which is just under 1,000 feet above sea level. But from what we've learned from past experiences, the jetting is good to go for a range of 20 degrees at least and 2,000 feet at least. In fact, if motorcycles were jetted this well way back in the early days of two-strokes all the time, we would have never thought to invent fuel injection. Other things that are great, the push-button seat removal, you can get to that battery, the Nissan brakes, which are great. Everything about the bike is easy maintenance. The airbox, you can easily get to the air filter by popping off the cover on the side. We've come to love that kind of stuff about Betas. We're going to keep on testing this bike. We can't wait to find out more about how it fits in with the hierarchy of two-strokes that are to come. There's a lot of stuff on the horizon. So check back with us at dirtbikemagazine.com and keep up with us on social media too. And thanks for watching.